If your vocabulary is lopsided and misplaced, you're not alone. Dictionary.com will fix everything. Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today on the Word Up Show, where we start to define words that you have a question about, and you need a question on certain slang terms, and you have questions on words that you want to touch base with in your everyday life. Now, speaking of words, what particularly are words? How do we personally define words in the English language, or otherwise the American English dialect? How do you feel when you hear the word word, that particular word, word? If we just open up to what a word is, Google just states that a word is a single distinct meaningful element of speech or writing used with others or sometimes alone to form a sentence, and typically shown with a space on either side when written or printed. So I think that words are a superpower. We get words out of nowhere, and we start to connect other people with words that may pertain to a certain dialect or a certain connotation, or a certain oxymoron, or a certain polyptoton, or obviously a certain syntax that many of us feel connected to, and it joins and conjoins other people together, and just asymptotically interlinks people and shows them that they care about themselves, they care about each other, and they care about the words they utilize as well. And I personally think that words in general are utilized as a superpower. Because you hear a lot of slang terms nowadays, and they convey a certain meaning, but firstly, they don't make a lick of sense. They don't. But as you start to build the blocks onto a certain slang term, then it'll start to stick. It will start to make sense adhesively in your encephalon, or in other words, it will start to stick with you and make sense in your brain. And that is a huge deal. I personally believe that words in general, the general words that you just hear out there, or just inside of you, inside and out, they're a huge deal. They are a huge deal when it comes to slang terms, polyptota, apocopes, diacopes as well. They are a huge deal. And Speaking of, there are certain parts of speech as well that really concern me, to the point where I want to utilize these parts of speech too, such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbial nouns, adverbial adjectives, adverbial verbs, and also linguistics and rhetorical strategies or rhetorical devices as well. They are generally linguistic and etymological and terminological as well. They most certainly are linguistic. That big L word, linguistic. Linguistics are mostly just pertaining to words, all particular words in the English language, in the American English language, and in the American English dialect, in an American English dictionary. Because what do we think about when we hear the polyptoton diction? What do we hear when we talk about the word diction? Well, obviously addiction, just the word diction, not addiction. Diction is the noun which pertains to the obvious word choices that we utilize. Just simply, diction is a word choice. How we tell our words what to do. Just like a budget, you tell your money where to go. Same for the words too. You tell them where to go. You tell them how to be utilized within your mouth, of which you speak out of. You have a tongue, you have lips, you have your whole mouth, you can speak, you have your whole vocabulary ahead of you, you have your whole dialect ahead of you as well, you have your whole etymology with you as well. You have to pack them together and compact them asymptotically to create a syntax, a sentence. Because what do you think about when you hear slang terms? That may be coming up in another episode, but I may touch base with it a lot more so that we can understand slang terms a bit better and probably get rid of them. Because the point is to utilize formal words and be more advanced when it comes to utilizing words that are more formal and not just general in a general context or concept. So just to start with the M&Ms of slang, I think utilizing slang terms is just to impress somebody with a random nonsensical word that just does not make a lick of sense at the first rate, but as we start to build up and start to elaborate on that rate, you start to make that make sense and build some sense and tackle that in there. But as I googled that, a slang term, or just slang in general, is just a type of language that consists of words and phrases that are regarded as very informal and are more common in speech than writing and are typically restricted to a particular context or group of people. So just to start on one particular M&M of slang, we obviously hear a slang term that is more obsolete and more of a nonce word, or what I call a phrasal nonce word, or a phrasally obsolete word, or an obsoletely phrasal word, or just a phrasal noun. Which particularly, pardon my numerical phrases, but we hear this phrase more often, and I do not utilize the hand motion for it, and I do not ever coalesce with the people that utilize the hand motion for it, and I refuse to do so. In other words, I refuse to interact with people who utilize this slang term most of the day, and most of their school days, in the workplace, in baseball stadiums and football arenas and basketball courts. They are totally despicable. And the term that I'm touching base with, just to start on one particular M&M, is 6'7". Now I can totally comprehend that 6'7" is just two cardinal numbers asymptotically coalescing together, right? Or in other words, 6'7" is just two cardinal numbers together to just make the general number, of which I say all the time, 67. Not 6'7", but 67. Now, where in the fresh blue-green world did we get 6'7" from? Because if you like 6'7" better, then where are you getting it from? I mean, you're not just pickpocketing it out of the internet. You're not just doing that. No. You're just utilizing it just to impress other people. Just to adhesively and magnetically coalesce them together and allow them to interchain in a way that impresses other people. Because that to me, that magnetically, or just obviously that obviously is the right word that I'm looking for, magnetic. That unmagnetically, that just repels. Because you know the old saying, opposites attract. But the opposite of that is that attractions repel. Now what I'm saying about attractions repelling, or just disconnecting the interlinkage of the interactions of people, is that 6-7 is more of a despicable term that is a failure to define. But I can at least define it for you, lest most elders will think about what it means, and most adults will think about it too. At least I can define it for you and be your teacher or your professor for what 6-7 is defined as. So if I'm thinking about, philosophically, what I'm thinking about for 6-7 is that it may pertain to a person's height. If you're saying 6'7", he's just 6'7". Or a measurement. Just like I said, the person's height is a measurement. Or the person's obesity rate is a measurement. But particularly, I would just go for the height itself, since it is a measurement. Length, height, width, the triumvirate of those symbols, L, W, and H, are and will always be measurements, especially for area, volume, density, and also perimeter as well. They are all measurements, especially in geometry and mathematics, and especially physics as well. Thinking about those two. But not 6-7. Not that measurement. Because mostly people will think that 6-7 is a huge, hot mess. That significantly is a huge mess that we can never escape the quicksand out of. That is like quicksand. It will just suck you in and just submerge you all the way to the bottom until you can't get out. Like a spaghetti stick in a black hole. We may thin up into a spaghetti stick and just be gone just like that. That's what our brain is doing. That obviously is what our brains are doing. They are starting to thin up. They are thinning. That's what they are. That's what they're doing. And we don't realize it. We constantly scroll on social media and look at slang terms and listen to that one particular kid just going 6-7. That's stupid. That is just despicably stupid. You just can't just open your mind and start going 67 like that one particular 1950s kid going 67. He just utilizes two particular numbers, 6 and 7, compacting and compounding them into one, asymptotically going 67. But you just have the particular nerve to go 6-7. Like it did not happen. You've got a nerve that you're just pulling out of my leg. That's crazy. I mean, we just have to sit there and think about that all the while. But I just want you to think, don't ever utilize slang terms. Don't. We will touch base with this, hopefully, in the next episode on slang. See what you can explore and just get rid of. This is the Word Up Show.